Okay, we're in week 13. You just got your civil rights essay in. That's great. And we're ready to start the last unit, which is the art and aesthetics unit. So this is going to be kind of a fun unit. It is quite different than what you've been doing so far. So I'll spend a little bit of time going through that and set you all up, go through the calendar, go through the assignment, and get everything rolling for this last unit. And we're almost there. We got 4 more weeks, okay? Now, a little note on the civil rights essays. I did get them all in, and I printed them all out. I'm starting to grade on them already. I should have them graded by next week. Give me until like Monday. A little heads up, though, I will not be able to make individual videos, okay? I can't do that with it. It takes so much time, and I won't be able to do it on top of wrapping up the semester and everything. So I always try to give people thorough responses on the first 2, so you kind of know what you need to address. And just go through and grade the last 2, okay? So that's what I'll be doing. I'll be entering the grades, I hope, by Monday. But boy, we got Thanksgiving and all that other silliness coming up. Give me until Monday at least, and you know, maybe if I don't quite get to it by Tuesday, but I'll do my best to get those done, okay? Now on the art unit, this one is a little bit funky. So I'm going to go through that assignment in a bit and show you how it's going to work a little bit differently. First thing I want to do before I even get into the art unit is go through the calendar and what we've got to do with a few other assignments. So I want to make sure everybody's on the same page, and I'll probably do this with all the remaining videos, is try to make sure everybody's ready to go for the end of the semester, okay? So let's go to the calendar for a bit. That always helps out. And what do we still have to do? So we're beginning the art unit right now. You are doing that by just watching this video. So great work there. Now we're going to be having discussions on the 23rd, then on the 28th, and the 3rd. Those discussions are pretty straightforward. I'll go through those in a bit. A couple things I want to call your attention to is the grammar quiz number 3 is next week, the 28th and the 29th. So you got about a week to get that one done. That's chapter 3. That's the toughest chapter to get done with, okay? So I wanted to put it off when you were not quite as hectic or quite as busy, when your schedule's not as hectic. So go through that one. Make sure as you're going through it, you get down the essential difference between action verbs and linking verbs and how they make essentially different types of clauses. Okay? There are action clauses and linking clauses. All clauses are either action clauses or linking. Make sure you get that aspect down. That's a little bit different than what most of you have been shown in your high school grammar, your junior high school. And also the definition of a sentence is an independent clause plus you say it is a sentence, okay? It's not a complete thought. That's a goofy definition, okay? And many clauses can't be sentences. Relative clauses can't, dependent clauses can't. So watch out for definitions of sentences like it has to have a subject and verb, because that's a really bad definition. And also complete thought, which is meaningless. So my definition of a sentence is it has an independent clause and you say it's a sentence, okay? So get the 2 types of clauses down, the action clauses and linking clauses, and then understand that one type of clause, an independent clause, is the only one that you need to have a sentence, and then you decide what comprises a sentence. After that, once you got that, you're good to go. Okay, so that's going to be on the 28th and 29th. And what I'm doing right now with it is just make sure you get the exercises done in the grammar book, okay, through chapter 3. Chapter 4 is going to be due next month, and that one's pretty dang easy. So I'm warning on chapter 3, it's a bit of a challenge. Chapter 4 is going to be due well, at the end of the semester on the 13th and 14th, and I'll give you 2 days to finish it up. That one's pretty easy. That's dependent clauses and parallels. If you've done all the work all along, that one you'll skate through no problem, okay? I am not going to require chapter 5. I think I mentioned that before. I was late on getting these quizzes posted and got you guys behind, so I'm just wiping that one off the slate, okay? If you do have time, you can go through it. That's just on commas. It is the easiest of the easy chapters. Commas are simple after you've gotten down words, phrases, clauses, and get the logic of the phrases and clauses down especially. So commas make perfect sense after that. Okay? So that one's going to be 13th and 14th, and the journal is going to be due on the 15th, the last day of class. Now on the journal, what it is you putting together all of the writing you have completed at the discussions, everything you've been putting together so far, okay, I would strongly urge you to get all of that writing together and copy and paste it into a Word file. And I've mentioned this before, but I really would emphasize doing this now so that you're not panicking at the last second with it. The journal is an easy way to get 100 points, which is as much as an essay. So you really want to do a good job on the journal. And it's a place where I find that students either get a 90 or 100, or they get a 30 or a 10 or something like that. So, and it can either make a grade and make that difference, and you were getting a C+, and then, man, it pushed you over to a B, and you got it. Good. And I'm always glad to see that. Or you were getting a B, and then you bombed on the journal, and now you got a C. And I always hate seeing that. So, put the journal together now. I would urge you to go through the discussions now. Copy and paste what you did on Antigone. Copy and paste what you did on Shoah. Same thing with the civil rights, with Du Bois, Washington, and Wells. And put it all together in a big Word file. So you open up Word and just start dumping all of what you've done in Word. And you should have, with those 3 units, somewhere around 15 pages of writing or so. Because you're going to get about 5 pages of writing with this last unit, about that. Depends on how much you scribble. And you want 20 pages of double-spaced, 12-point type stuff put together. Now, I won't go through and carefully read it the way I read all your essays, but I do read it to make sure you were responding to the content that we were covering throughout the semester. I do read it, okay? So make sure it gets to the 20 pages. So many of you, boy, you're going to have no problem. I get journals sometimes that have 30, pages or more. You're just going to put this together, save, hit, attach it to an email, and you're done. If you put it all together, you put the 3 previous units together, and you see, oh my gosh, I only have 10 pages of writing. Yeah, you're behind, and you're not going to get a great grade, but you want to know that now so you can start developing what you've already done. And you can do that, okay? And you're going to have these 3 discussions to develop it even more. So you want to see it now. So you can develop your journal now. Go back and add a little bit more to Antigone, to Shoah, to Washington and Du Bois and Wells and things like that. Maybe some recent thoughts you've had on what you saw in Shoah in light of what's been going on, or Antigone and what's happening with with the play and what the implications are of it. And write anything you want. Now, one big warning: do not resort to copying Wikipedia or SparkNotes or something else. Yes, I know all about that stuff because I've been around a while. Don't copy that, change a few words and put it in. Man, it lights up. I can see it immediately. So please don't resort to plagiarizing stuff. That will get you a 0 on the assignment. Don't do that. Okay? So notice it now. Just if you need to develop stuff, start developing it now, so that you can get 100% on that assignment, and it can really make a difference in your grade, okay? So that's where the calendar is. That's what we're doing. We're going to have the final essay due on the 13th because I want you to get through the quiz and the journal by the end. And a little warning, I can't really be pushing stuff off at the end because we're up against a deadline. The world comes to an end at the end of the semester. We all know that. So, so we can't push stuff back. So now, what are we going to be doing with the art unit? Let's go through that. Let me show you the art. I'll get to these discussions. But let me show you really quickly the art, the essay. Let's go to that. And you're going to be writing a 6-paragraph essay that analyzes a single artwork or artifact by an artist covered in Vasari's Lives of the Artists. And you're probably thinking, what the heck is that? Okay, you should be. If you aren't and you actually know Vasari, boy, you're an unusual person, but that's great. Let me get over here and get out of the way. Let me actually blip myself. Goodbye. So I'll get to Vasari's Lives in a second. Describe the artwork or artifact carefully and analyze how aesthetic principles and historical issues from Vasari play out in the artwork's composition. Do not judge the artwork itself according to your taste, but instead analyze it using your understanding of aesthetics and the historical issues. That's what we're going to be doing here. Okay? It's essentially what would be called like a formalism approach. We're looking at the composition of the piece and how it's put together, and then we're making an aesthetic judgment on it. And we're going to need a little bit of research, okay? So we're going to be focusing on one aspect of the artwork in each body paragraph. You're going to be using the skills you have learned all along, but applying it to something visual rather than something written, okay? That's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be breaking down, the way we've been breaking down written work, we're going to be breaking down a picture, an artist, a painting, or possibly a sculpture. I'd prefer that you wrote on painting, but you can do sculpture if you really, really want to. That's okay. And you're going to try to develop an insight. That's your critical thinking. Okay? You know, to guide the reader through the painting or the sculpture. And your analysis of the artwork must be based on a close reading of the artwork and the aesthetic principles the artist uses. So I'm going to go through those principles in a bit. And I'm also going to show you Vasari in a bit. Okay? So your research, the research, I want you to do one outside source. Okay? Should allow you to develop your interpretation of the artwork. You need to have at least one outside source that relates to the aesthetics or history of the artwork. Okay? So you're going to be using that, but don't run off and do the research yet. Just hold your horses. Let's go to Vasari first, okay? And here he is over here. He's in the readings, okay? And you do not need to read all of Vasari, okay? Now, this is a huge file. Do not read the whole thing unless you're really, really lonely and have no friends at all. Because this thing's long and it's dry and everything else, but it's an absolutely fascinating work of art criticism. It's the foundation of art criticism. And he wrote this in the Renaissance. He was an artist writing during the Renaissance about the artists who had come before him or the artists living at his time. And he's writing essentially their lives. And this was not done before. Vasari was doing something radically new. And we're going to use it to kind of get a sense of what was going on and how they viewed things. They really did not, up until Vasari, see artists as individuals of kind of individual genius. This was something that would come later on. Okay, the idea that we would, glorify the artist as an individual and collect their works and know names like Picasso and Degas and all this other stuff was totally new. These were instead craftsmen. And craftswomen of the time period. There were some women painters at this time. But no matter. But Vasari goes through, and I've decided to use him as kind of our guide so you can use, get a Renaissance perspective on a Renaissance or medieval artists. And so I want to get you guys out of current contemporary art and kind of throw you back to medieval and Renaissance. And what he does is he goes through and does these little portraits of all of them. And these are all written portraits. You have Titian, Michelangelo, you've heard of those names, but there's other guys that most of you probably haven't heard about, like Fiorentino, Romano, and others. And by the way, I've learned that if you're speaking Italian, you always got to kind of shake your hand in the air, and that helps with pronunciation. So check out one of these artists, and you can look them up, and I'm assuming you guys all have Google. Yes, you do. And you can look up some of the work that these guys have done and see some of the things they've done and find a work of art that you kind of think is interesting. Now, I'm going to urge you from the beginning to avoid the well-known artists, such as Michelangelo and Leonardo da Vinci that he covers. Everybody knows them. Botticelli's fairly well known too. But I would urge you to find something weird and unusual that nobody else has written, that you don't know about. So you can use one of these lives, read it through and go, this guy's kind of interesting. Donatello's interesting. He is more than just a tortoise. Yes, that is where his name came from. So, and then you have these other ones, Battista, Alberti. Oh, I forgot to shake my hand, Alberti. Go ahead and look into them a little bit and find their images, look them up on Google, spend a little bit of time searching around and find out what's going on. with them and find an image that you find interesting. And a little bit of a warning ahead of time. Most of the artwork is religious in orientation. What I don't want you doing is writing about your own religious convictions. I should have no idea what your religious convictions are. The artwork should neither confirm nor deny what you actually are compelled to hold to, and it doesn't matter what your religious background is or your convictions are. I should have no idea. If you don't want to write on a religious painting or a sculpture, there are enough non-religious subjects within these names that you can find it. Most of them painted both religious subjects and non-religious, so you can find them. But I want to be very clear. You should not be either embracing it because it confirms your own beliefs or dismissing it because it's against your beliefs. That should come nowhere near this. Instead, what you can do, if you're interested in, is look into the, if there's, like I'm going to talk about and probably write about Moses's leaving Egypt map painting. I will use a little bit from Exodus to understand the story and what he's doing with it. God, I could never pronounce his name correctly, Perugino or Perugino or whatever it is. So how he uses Exodus and other things. And you can use it that way, but you don't have to, subscribe to those views. It's up to you, and I shouldn't know, okay? So I want to make it very clear we're going to keep that out of it and just write about, the story, and you can look into the background one way or another, okay? So we're going to use Vasari's Lives to find an artist. And then you're going to search and find an artwork that you want to write on, okay? That you want to write on using Vasari's Lives and using Google and things like that and going into it, okay? And that should be good to go. That should get you in good shape, okay? Let me get myself over here again. I always get confused. So that's what the assignment's going to be. And let me come back to the calendar. So that's what. So don't worry too much about the assignment just yet, okay? You're going to be searching through Vasari, finding one you like, doing some time on Google, and then, interpreting it. But the first thing you need to start to do, and I'm going to get to aesthetics in a bit, is go through these artworks I'm going to guide you to. Siambui's Last Supper, I'm probably pronouncing that incorrectly. Let's try it this way. Siambui, look at that. That was much better. And then I'm going to take you to Botticelli, La Columnia. That one's kind of funny. And then last one is going to be Perugino's Moses Leaving Egypt. These are going to just be you writing about 3 works of art. Now, I'm going to ask you not to write your essay on one of these 3, but instead just practice the skill of describing an artwork and really walking through it carefully, and then assessing it for its aesthetics, whether or not you think it's a beautiful painting or a sublime painting. And that's what we're going to do ultimately with this assignment. You're going to dig up an artwork. You're going to use Vasari's Lives to choose an artist that you find, this guy's kind of interesting. And you're going to dig up an artwork by this person that you think is kind of strange and funny. And then what you're going to do is break it down into pieces. You're going to be doing essentially a formalist approach to it, breaking it down into pieces. And you're going to be making an aesthetic assessment of it, whether or not this artwork is beautiful or sublime. Okay, that's what you're going to be doing. So let me take you through really quickly now what the nature of aesthetics is. And I put a little thingy together here. Let me walk you through this. And this is on aesthetics, and so you understand what it is. And I'm telling you right now, once you get this down, you can go to any coffee house and fake it, get your triple espresso, and act like you know about art, okay? So a little bit on Vasari is, he is the first real art historian, the most significant one that we have for European art. So what he does is he just summarizes the lives of medieval and Renaissance artists. That's what he does, and not so much of a discussion of aesthetics. That's what you are going to be bringing into your essay, okay? He does not really get into aesthetics. We're going to bring that in. Aesthetics really doesn't get developed philosophically until we get to Kant. It was floating around in the writings of, a number of writers. Bacon and others were writing about it. There is a little bit in a Roman guy called Longinus and a few others in Aristotle and stuff like that. But overall, it doesn't get fully developed, honestly, until after the Renaissance, our understanding of it. And let me go through kind of what it is. And again, the big guy in this field is a guy named Immanuel Kant, but I won't go through him with you, but I'll be using his ideas to explain these concepts. And generally, when you're talking about aesthetics, you're talking about aesthetics of the beautiful and the sublime. And I'm going to give you a little thumbnail approach to this. There's two primary aesthetic responses to all art forms. These are not a matter of taste. Okay, aesthetics are not taste. Taste is whether you like it or you don't. You can like French fries or you don't. You can like that painting or not like it. You can like, certain types of music, and you can think, oh, I like, Taylor Swift a lot. Or you can dislike her a lot. But we won't worry about that. That's taste. That's like or dislike. Aesthetics gets into the formalism, how it's put together. And it's about whether or not there's some kind of harmony or disruption going on there. It's a different type. This is really analysis, is what it is. Now, ultimately, it is a response of the individual. That's something Kant really clarified better than anybody else. Ultimately, the person, looking at the art, if it's painting, listening to it, if it's music, or, putting it together, if it's literature, ultimately, it is an individual response, but it's not as simple as taste. So in aesthetics, I should add to this. Let me go ahead and add to it. It's the principles that guide the creation or interpretation of art. Okay, and let me get myself out of there again. So that's what it is. Now, that's how I'm going to treat it. I know if you look online, you're going to find other things about it. I'm right, they're wrong. Okay, so it's the principles that guide the creation or interpretation of art. So even though I don't think it was adequately developed at the time of the Renaissance, even though it was floating around, the ideas of the beautiful and the sublime, and you're going to see it in the artwork, it was still there, guiding the creation of it. Somehow the artists were finding something. Somehow this was beautiful, or somehow it's disruptive and sublime. But again, what Kant really spelled out better than anybody else was the nature of these aesthetics. And I'm going to give you, just again, a little thumbnail sketch of what Kant wrote about. First, let me give you beauty. And you're going to use this as you're looking at your art pieces. I want you to use these notions. But I also want you to be aware that you can change the basic nature of what beauty is and what the sublime is based on your artwork. Okay? You can add to it, change it around a bit, okay? Beautiful is, you know it without thinking about it. When you see beauty, it's just, wow, that's great. That's what Kant wrote about it. He said it's an immediate response without what he called the faculty of the understanding. A guy who came along and stole stuff from Kant was a guy named Coleridge, and Coleridge came up with this really cool phrase of multeity of unity. It just clicks together so nicely when you see beauty. And again, you don't even have to think about it. I'm going to ask you to break things down and to show that multeity of unity, to show how it's working together. That's what you've got to do when you're doing formalism. You've got to break it down. You've got to show the harmony of the image, the sound, or the language. Now, for us, it's going to be the harmony of the image. But you can do this in music. You can break it down. Mozart's seen as a beautiful composer, and he can be broken down to show the harmony of him, of how he's composed his pieces. You can do that with image. You can do it in language. A very famous poem that's known as being beautiful. It's I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud from Wordsworth, where he puts all these images and has the images overlap, and they just click together in a lovely poem. I don't like the poem, that's taste, but aesthetically, it is one of the most beautiful things ever written. It really is. Okay? So notice the distinction. You can like or dislike something, but you can also appreciate it aesthetically. No matter what, that's what appreciation's about, is to understand the aesthetics. Okay? So it's regardless of any political or historical implications. That's what Kant really pointed out. And Coleridge actually explained it very effectively too. You don't care so much about the message, but you can appreciate the unity that it's achieved. And you can really uncover it through careful examination and reflection. So you know it without reflection. You know that this is beautiful, but you can uncover the mechanisms and the forms that are going on in the composition through careful examination and reflection. That's what we're going to be doing with this essay. Here's some examples of beauty. A lot of people think these are beautiful. Let me again get out of this picture. These are Ansel Adams paintings. Most of you, if you're a Californian, know these. Most people are struck by the beauty of Ansel Adams' photographs, of his nature photography. And you know it right when you see it. Now, I want to be clear. Again, somebody could come to these Ansel Adams paintings, or photographs, and say they are sublime. You could, but you're going to have to approach it differently, and that's fine. But most people see that as beautiful. Same thing with this one, with the trees. These strike people as being beautiful images. Now, and again, most Californians know that. Here's Botticelli's Venus on the Half Shell. This is a famous one. We're going to do a different Botticelli. Let me get him up here. Get that one out of here, the Raphael. That usually strikes people as having some kind of unity to it. With her, Venus's figure in the middle, in the background, notice the three, the white, the green, and the blue, and the way the red and the green are coming in. There's some kind of balance in here. Even though it's not perfectly symmetrical, but there's a balance to it, okay? The way this gives her a foundation and everything else. That's what beauty is. And you can break down the composition. This is a Raphael, I think it's Raphael. This is the School of Athens. You have Plato here and Aristotle there. But notice the balance and symmetry throughout this image. Even though there's disruptive stuff here and there is overall a very pleasing effect of this. And again, that effect is individual. But you can see where it's coming from in the composition. Okay, so that's what beauty is. The sublime is different. Let me go to the sublime now. With the sublime, there's both a pain and a pleasure in the image, or in the experience of it. Okay, there's a pain in understanding it. There's something either frustrating or overwhelming it, and it's just like, ah. Okay, let me put me over here. Let me come back in here. Let me do that again. It's okay, there. Now you know. And that's actually the response a lot of people have when they're seeing a lot of modern artwork. When they don't like it, they think it's stupid. It's mostly because their understanding of it is frustrated. They don't know what they're looking at. The sublime can cause people to be totally indifferent to it because they're not open to the nature of an aesthetic. Okay, and I'll come to a few examples of that. Or it can be overwhelming. Many people can actually respond to Ansel Adams' portraits as if they're overwhelming, the majesty of it. So you can actually approach Ansel Adams even as sublime. But most folks, it's very pleasing. And it really is based in that emotional response. But what we're going to be doing is breaking down the image, the form of the image, to explain where that response is coming from. Okay? So there's both that pain in understanding it. It's either overwhelming or it's somehow frustrating. But there's simultaneously a pleasure in welcoming the unknown. Okay? It's this. I don't get this, but somehow, yes, this is good. But again, it's simultaneously frustrating, overwhelming, but pleasurable in welcoming that unknown. So it's either overwhelming to the senses. That's what actually Longinus wrote about. Kant wrote about also the frustration and making sense out of it. So it can be overwhelming the way Ansel Adams' portraits can be, but there can also be something about it that you just can't make sense out of. It's frustrating, what Kant called the faculty of understanding. Okay? There is a felt presence of something indeterminate. You don't know what it is. Okay? So some examples of the sublime are things, this is Goya. Goya's, I think this is Saturn consuming his children. It's Saturn or somebody who's going to get in a whole lot of trouble with the county. Consuming his children. And that, it's obviously, troubling. that is. And, not just the gore of it, but notice the black and the fear in his eyes as if he's doing something horribly wrong, and he is, and he knows it, but notice his ferocity in his clenched fist, and the fact that he's almost looking at us but looking away. All of this is very troubling. Okay, the absolute animation of Saturn and the death of the child here. That is all very troubling, and that's what the sublime is. Both troubling, but there's a captivating aspect to this painting. And he had that in this painting too. Let me see if I can get this one in there. This was his painting of this, I think it was April 3rd or May 3rd, during a revolution in Spain. And you have his, magnificent, plea with the people who are about to fire him down. But he's almost Christ-like, and the image is focused on him, but you get the death here. And this violence and this impersonal violence, but he is brought and animated to life. So there's both this troubling aspect to it, but notice there's some type of captivation about it too. There's the city in the background, and this line of this gold hill coming down, as if there's something magical going on. That's what sublime was in the, just after the Renaissance. Picasso's paintings, and this is Jackson Pollock. Many people have the response, very negative responses, but the sublime was an aesthetic of the 20th century. And you can see it in Picasso, and that it's troubling and it's frustrating. It's not overwhelming, it's frustrating to make sense of Cubism because it's shattering the image's perspective. We have a single perspective here in Goya, but notice that you have multiple perspectives going on and clumped together. And there's no clear differentiation. That's the frustrating aspect that Kant was writing about, even though Picasso is much after Kant. But that's going on in Cubism. And it's also going on in Jackson Pollock, which I still don't know how to respond to. But darn if I kind of like the guy. But again, that's the other nature of the sublime. So I want you to be aware of these two aesthetics that are going on in any artwork. And what you want to do, here's what you want to do with those aesthetics. The beautiful is going to be harmonious. The sublime is going to be troubling or frustrating. So let's go to the discussions here. What I've done is post one on Seimbui, and you're going to go to Seimbui's artwork here. This is the Last Supper, and most of you know, Leonardo da Vinci's Last Supper. It was a common, topic especially in the medieval and Renaissance times. He's got one here that's absolutely electric, and notice how it's kind of off kilter. Go ahead and describe this carefully, and then give some sense of your response to it aesthetically, but walk through the composition of it. Notice this figure is leaning over. This seems to be Judas, and Christ here is being obscured somewhat by him. This may be Peter, I'm not sure, reaching out to him. Notice the hands reaching out, but the hands not, and these two in discussion. Notice the faces here, and the oddity of it, these two red pillars here. Just go through it and walk through it, and again, you can respond to it either as a beautiful painting or a sublime painting. But I want you to first break down the composition and then assess it as either beautiful or sublime. Okay? So you do that one first by the end of the week, and then you're going to be doing the next one, which is Botticelli. Botticelli's La Columnia. This one, same thing. Breaking it down and then assessing it. And break it down carefully. And usually you're going to have your initial response, but then break it down and see if that holds up. Did you find a unity in it and a harmony, or does it still just not quite right and it's frustrating you somehow? So go through it and see what you think. I'm going to assess it your own darn way, but break it down first, carefully, and then assess it, each one. So do those 3 paintings, and that's going to get you warmed up to do your own assessment. And the other thing is going to be doing the library assignment. That's the link right below this video. I want you to go and do this library assignment within a week or so. It's on the calendar. Go ahead and complete the library assignment. Make darn sure. Let me come back in here. Here I am, or I'll go down here. Make darn sure you get your email and my email entered correctly. joseph.pendleton@vvc.edu. When you do this, you have to enter your email in my email to make sure the results are sent to me. joseph.pendleton@vvc.edu. Make sure you get that right. It will send it automatically to me. I enter it and everybody's happy. This is not too tough for most folks, but it goes through the nature of research and what's good, bad, and ugly. And I need you to complete this to pass the course, okay? So make sure you get this done. Most students get through it pretty quickly. Let me see. I think it's due by next week. Let me double check. Make sure everybody knows. Yeah, library research assignment is due by the end of next week. So get that done. Really what you should start on is get going on the first one, the Siambui. There, I can do it better when I shake my hands. Get the Siambui going. Get that grammar going. Get ready for quiz number 3. And get it going with that, and then get the research library assignment done sometime next week, definitely by Friday. But heads up on the quizzes coming up. Get those going, and then I'm going to make follow-up videos to get this essay going. This essay usually most students like, okay? All right, take care, folks.